Welcome friends to Insulin Part 4, first lecture of Applied in Diabetes Mellitus Part 1. Today we will discuss about the basic definition, etiology, stages of the diabetes mellitus. Objective of today's lecture, we will begin with the definition, etiology, stages of diabetes mellitus, investigation and very basic treatment of it. Diabetes mellitus, meaning dia means more and bits means volume of urine. So diabetes means passing large volume urine. Now mellitus means sweet. So when you combine the meaning of these two words, means passing of sugar or sweet with large quantity of urine, that is diabetes mellitus. It is not a single disease but set of disease. So in short, by definition we can say it is syndrome means sets of disease, so too many symptoms. So it is syndrome of impaired carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism, which is caused by either lack of insulin or due to decreased sensitivity of tissue to insulin. So it is syndrome of impaired carbohydrate, protein, fat metabolism, either total absence of insulin or mutation in the receptor or decreased sensitivity of the tissue to insulin. Now, etiology of the diabetes mellitus. So primary and secondary. In primary, type 1 diabetes mellitus, that is insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, or you can say it is a juvenile diabetes mellitus. IDDM means insulin dependent, means there is a lack of insulin, is the main reason for type 1, and it is seen in younger people, younger individual, less than 20 years. That's why it is named as juvenile diabetes mellitus. The reason for type 1, following viral infection like mumps, rotavirus, rubella, cytomegalovirus. It is autoimmune disorder where beta cell are damaged, destruction of the beta cell. Other reasons postulated are the diet, breastfeeded infant or children have a lesser risk of the diabetes mellitus, means those are not taking mother's milk in initial period of the life for 6 months or 1 year, they are more prone to type 1 diabetes mellitus. Maternal factor, you can say high maternal age, sometimes idiopathic, we will not find any reason for type 1 diabetes mellitus. So here there is a destruction of the beta cell. In autoimmune disorder particularly, you will find beta cell antibodies, but definitely other cells are totally normal for the pancreas. In type 2 diabetes mellitus, that is non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, means diabetes is there, but the problem is in the receptor, their sensitivity. So non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So in form of treatment, you are not supposed to give insulin initially. Later you can give when uncontrolled diabetes type 2, but it is adult onset, means after 25 or 30 years. So it is also known as maturity onset diabetes, like type 1. Type 2 is also multifactorial, like stress, obesity, then hereditary and metabolic syndrome are mainly responsible for type 2, sometimes idiopathic. Now metabolic syndrome means what? It is the presence of obesity, insulin resistance, fasting hyperglycemia, or increase in the triglyceride and decrease in the HDL level, atherosclerosis. So when three or more these features are found, you can say it is a metabolic syndrome. So these are the factors which are responsible for the type 2 diabetes mellitus. So type 1 IDDM, insulin dependent; type 2 non-insulin dependent; type 1 juvenile; type 2 adult onset. Secondary diabetes means cause is not related with the primary organ, that is the pancreas. So we have learned in the previous lectures of the endocrine systems that in pituitary, acromegaly and gigantism, 8 to 10% people will develop diabetes mellitus because there is insulin resistance, increasing the growth hormone, which is mainly responsible for the resistance. The second is the Cushing syndrome, excessive glucocorticoid secretion leads to hyperglycemia. Then sometime thyrotoxicosis, Graves' disease. Then you can say following chronic pancreatitis or after total removal, that is pancreatectomy. Other reasons may be like glucagonoma, somatostatinoma, pheochromocytoma, and polycystic ovarian syndrome in female. Sometimes gestational diabetes, means during pregnancy when mother is having diabetes, that is gestational diabetes. Then children have a more, they are more prone to develop diabetes in future. So gestational diabetes, very important reason. Then some genetic syndrome like Klinefelter syndrome, Down syndrome, Turner syndrome. So these are all the secondary. So primary is type 1, type 2. Secondary are the endocrinal or sometimes genetic reasons or sometimes gestational diabetes. So these are the different etiological aspect of the diabetes, primary and secondary. Difference between types of diabetes mellitus. We have just discussed in the previous slide that type 1 diabetes mellitus is the juvenile diabetes mellitus. Type 2 diabetes mellitus is adult or you can say adult onset diabetes, or you can say maturity onset diabetes syndrome. Type 1 diabetes mellitus is less common. Only 5 to 10% of the people from world diabetes group. But type 2 is very common, 90 to 95%. Age of onset less than 20 year in type 1 and more than 30 in case of type 2 diabetes mellitus. But nowadays, as the incidence of the obesity increase worldwide, so even younger individual around 20 to 25 year are suffering from adult onset diabetes, that is type 2 diabetes mellitus. Type 1 diabetes mellitus is abruptly onset. Type 2 slowly, gradually increasing blood glucose level. Main reason for type 1 is lack of insulin, while insulin resistance is the main reason for type 2 diabetes mellitus. So in type 1, insulin sensitivity is unchanged, while in type 2, the sensitivity of the insulin is reduced. In type 1, ketosis, acidosis or diabetic ketoacidosis is very common. In case of type 2, hyperosmolar coma is very common, rather diabetic ketoacidosis. So these are some other basic difference between the types of diabetes mellitus. Stages of diabetes mellitus. Stage 1, pre-diabetic. Since birth, when strong family history of diabetes mellitus with the mother or father. Stage number 2, latent or subclinical. That means having a history of diabetes in the family, but sugar level is absolutely normal, but this sugar level increase in the stress like pregnancy, infection, that is considered as stage 2, latent diabetes or subclinical diabetes. Stage 3, overt diabetes, means diabetes is already present. Stage 4, chronic diabetes, advanced diabetes with one or two complications, that is considered as chronic diabetes. Stage 4 diabetes mellitus. Investigations for diagnosis of diabetes mellitus. First of all, urine examination. Normally, it is done to screen large population, like in camps. We can also use it in OPDs, mainly by dipstick method. We ask the patient to collect the urine and dip the stick in the urine for 30 seconds, and after that we compare with the chart for presence of glucose, ketone bodies, or presence of albuminuria. Now glucose appear in urine, that is glycosuria, indicate diabetes mellitus. Normally glucose do not appear in urine as 100% glucose is reabsorbed from proximal convoluted tubule of the kidney that we are knowing. But when renal threshold for glucose is more than 180 milligram per deciliter, it start appearing in urine. That is true for the diabetes mellitus. Now new word has come, renal threshold. Now what is renal threshold? To understand it, we need to understand transport maximum, Tmax. Now what is Tmax? It is maximal rate at which substance actively reabsorbed. It is maximal or maximum rate at which any substance being actively reabsorbed, that is glucose, amino acid, phosphate and others. Right now we focus on Tmax of glucose, means transport maximal for glucose. Transport maximum for glucose in adult is 320 milligram per minute. That means maximum 320 milligram of glucose can be reabsorbed per minute from proximal convoluted tubule of kidney. At that time, if we considered GFR 125 ml per minute, then renal threshold would be 320, that is transport maximum, divided by 125, that is GFR, multiplied by 100. So that is the 256 milligram percentage. So renal threshold we have just discussed. Normally it is 180 milligram percentage. Now we have just discussed that transport maximum for glucose is 320 milligram per minute, and at that time if GFR is 125, then renal threshold is 256 milligram percentage. Only one is true. Yes, renal tubules are variable in their lengths. So all the renal tubule, all the nephrons are not same length. They are different in their length and functions. So if we do average, then this 256 is reduced to 180 milligram percentage. So average renal threshold for glucose is 180 milligram percentage. Beyond this limit, means if blood glucose is more than 180 milligram or beyond this limit, there is increase in the blood glucose level, there will be saturation of specific carrier proteins or enzymes machinery. This will limit the process of reabsorption, and the substance, here we are talking about glucose, that will appear in the urine. We can detect ketone body in the urine by Rothra's test. So ketonuria. Then presence of albumin in urine. Normally we cannot detect albumin in urine. If presence of albumin increases, and if it is between 50 to 300 milligram per day in urine, that is known as microalbuminuria. Simply presence of albumin less than 300 milligram per day, that is microalbuminuria, which is early predictor of renal damage or nephropathy. Presence of albumin more than 300 milligram per day indicate advanced nephropathy. So it is very important. So in the patients of the diabetes, one should recommend microalbuminuria every 6 months. It is costly investigation, but at least every 6 months one should go for microalbuminuria for the early detection of the kidney damage. Then random blood sugar. Now name itself suggests random means anything. Before meal, after 2 hour, 4 hour, anytime. Just prick, measure blood glucose level by glucometer. It should be below 200 milligram per deciliter. If it is more than 200 milligram per deciliter, you suspect or you can diagnose diabetes mellitus, and you ask the patient to go for FBS and PP2PS. Now, what is FBS? That is fasting blood sugar. You ask the patient or subject to do overnight fast. Ask him to not to take anything except water after 10 or 11 p.m. in the night. Then after 8 hours of fast, early in the morning, collect the blood sample. Right? Minimum 8 hour fast is required. That is known as fasting blood sugar. A normal range is 70 to 100 milligram per deciliter. 70 to 100 milligram per deciliter. Then give 75 gram of glucose in 250 ml of water and call back patient after 2 hours. After 2 hours. And again take the sample, that is PP2BS, that is postprandial 2 hour for 2, or simply PPBS, postprandial blood sugar. So you take the fasting blood sample, give glucose, after 2 hour call back patient, collect blood sample. Normal range for PP2BS less than 140 milligram per deciliter. If it is more than 140, either patient may be pre-diabetic or diabetic. So normal range, again I am repeating, for RBS below 200 milligram per deciliter, fasting blood sugar 70 to 100 milligram per deciliter, and postprandial blood sugar less than 140 milligram per deciliter. One more, HbA1c, glycosylated hemoglobin. Now it is the best index to measure long-term control of glucose, say for average 3 months. It is actually glycated hemoglobin or glycohemoglobin. We should understand the basic principle. Whenever there is hyperglycemia, protein in the body undergoes glycation. That is, glucose bind with the protein, and this is non-enzymatic process. So here glucose bind with the hemoglobin, which is protein, and this binding is almost irreversible. So glucose remain inside the red blood cell or erythrocyte till lifespan of RBC, and that is average 3 months. We are knowing 120 days. Now this glycated hemoglobin has four types: HbA1c, that is very common. That is total 80% of the HbA1. Glycated hemoglobin HbA1 has four types. Out of them, HbA1c, that is very common, that is 80%, and that is practically we are measuring. Here actually glucose attached to the N terminal of the valine of beta chain of hemoglobin. Other are HbA1 small a1. So HbA1 then HbA1 small a2. So HbA1 and HbA1 small d. So HbA1d. These are the other glycated hemoglobin, but we are measuring only one, HbA1c, which is the major component, 80%. So in short, HbA1c means mean glucose over 10 to 12 weeks, that is almost 3 months. If it is less than 6, you are non-diabetic. If it is between 6 to 7, good control of diabetes. If it is greater than 8, greater than 9, then you can say uncontrolled diabetes. Now what is the need of this glycated hemoglobin? Say for example, someone is eating sweet, fruit, rich in sugars, but when there is a time for investigation, one is strictly not taking any carbohydrate rich diet, not taking sweet, strictly maintaining for 10 to 15 days, then his fasting and postprandial blood sugar will be absolutely normal, though he has eaten sweets, carbohydrate rich food. But in the same patient we measure HbA1c, it will be elevated, and when we can catch the patient that you have not followed the diet advice, so there is no escape for the patient. So HbA1c you should measure. Then acetone smell, we are knowing acetone is vaporized in the, we can smell fruity smell in the patient. Nowadays physician measure EGFR because there will be a gradual nephropathy in diabetic patient. To detect early, they use EGFR. And importance of GFR, EGFR is increased nowadays. This is the latest investigation that physician do. Now other investigation, lipid profile, because there is increase in blood cholesterol level, and diabetes altered lipid profile, sometimes increased triglyceride 500 milligram per deciliter. Then you can do renal function test, right? As I mentioned, EGFR is the latest investigation. Serum creatinine has very limited role to diagnose nephropathy, but EGFR is easily diagnosed with the help of the serum creatinine. Then, as I mentioned, one should go for the ophthalmologist for retina screening every 6 months. So these are the some other investigation supportive or routine investigation in the patient of diabetes mellitus. So these are the main investigation, I think, for diagnosis purpose as well as for the prognosis of the patient, or to diagnose various complications earlier. Now the prevention and treatment part. Now prevention is always better than cure, and that is absolutely true for diabetes mellitus. I'm not going to deliver a very big lecture on the prevention, but I want to highlight few points. So one is prone to or having very high risk for developing diabetes mellitus for those whose parents, or you can say the masi, auntie, grandmother, grandfather having diabetes, they try to reduce the risk factors that is only in their hand, either to delay development of the diabetes or for prevention, like measure your body mass index according to height and weight and try to maintain this body mass index within normal range. Control your weight, particularly body fat percentage. At least do exercise for 30 minutes a day, no once a no 5 days a week. You should do exercise for 30 minutes every day, mainly weight bearing exercise, that is fast walking for 30 minutes. Reduce or stop intake of junk food, fry food and cold drinks which increase your body weight, and many more things. But these are some basic points that I want to highlight for the prevention. Treatment part in type 1, in initial part, you can use some immunosuppressive therapies like cyclosporine, amilorate, which are immunosuppressive and will prevent the destruction of the beta cell. But once the full disease has developed and you diagnosed late, then there is no any alternative. You have to use the insulin lifelong. So many cricketer or sportsmen having type 1 diabetes mellitus, they are taking regular insulin, and we can delay or prevent complications. So treatment part for type 1 diabetes mellitus, insulin. Type 2, again one should do regular physical exercise for at least 30 to 45 minutes according to advice of doctor. Heavy exercise is not recommended in type 2 diabetes mellitus. So consult a doctor person to person there may be variation. He will advise exercise for 30 minutes. It's enough. If you are not able to do continuous for 30 minutes, then you can split it 10 or 15 minutes in morning, 10 or 15 minutes walking in the evening, and 10 or 15 minutes in the night. That is best. Second, restrict caloric intake. You have to change your food habit, and you have to reduce your body weight, particularly body fat percentage. This will improve insulin sensitivity. When person lose the weight or lose the fat, requirement for the medicine become less in type 2 diabetes mellitus. In type 2, we are using oral hypoglycemic drug, or you can say anti-diabetic drug. There is a basically classification for this anti-diabetic drug, but I am not going in the detail of the classification. Previously, tolbutamide and other drugs were used. Nowadays, metformin is the mainly used in type 2 diabetes mellitus, and many more, glibenclamide and others. So these are all the anti-diabetic drugs, and with this drug, if you cannot control type 2 diabetes mellitus, you have to add insulin, because in later stage or very uncontrolled stage of the type 2 diabetes mellitus, there will be a destruction of the beta cell. Beta cell get exhaust, and later there is a decrease in the insulin secretion as well, with the or along with the insulin resistance. So you have to add insulin, but very last, when with medicines or anti-diabetic drug you cannot control the blood sugar level, then you have to add insulin. So that's from today's lecture. Thank you. Jai Swaminarayan.